you know the drill. So this is what it is. So thank you very much. And obviously it's enjoyable talking to you. So I'm looking forward to this. And you are sitting, you have to tell us where you're sitting, because it seems like a beautiful place.
It
So
is.
please.
I'm so happy to have join you today, and congratulations again on your series and just the guests that you're bringing together. I'm joining you from a little place called Dutton Bay, which is in South Australia near Coffins Bay. So those from Australia would know Coffins Bay as the home of magnificent oysters. So I have a family. My mum's have a little basic shack just here. It's very simple. And this is, I think I'm generation 6 that has been connected to this country here. So, you know, for a non-Indigenous person to have connections to this little part of the world, it's my soul home here. And so I feel so privileged to join you from a place that enriches my soul.
Exactly. I think that connection also we have to make in terms of the place that you are from, that connection to that place, and be close to nature, being close to nature. I think those aspects also you have to maybe just look at, and you might not have, or you may have looked at it. So let's also take that as because I think that's an important aspect of the spirituality and what you bring into mediation. So I think that's important.
Yeah, look, I think it's a really interesting place to start a conversation about mediation and our connection to country, particularly, I guess, for the cross-cultural work that I do in Australia, working with our First Nations people who are traditional owners of this land that we're on. And so whenever I have the privilege of working in communities and with Indigenous people in Australia, I guess my first thing is always to acknowledge that privilege that I have to come onto their country and pay my respects to them and to their continuing connection to land, to the spirituality of the land, to their law and to their culture. So for me, it's become a part of not just doing that work, but part of my everyday work actually is recognizing that as peacemakers, we are connected in really different ways. And we're connected both to the country and to the land and the spirit as much as to the people that we're working with.
But what I'll do is I'll share with you what Kathy Potter, she's in Canada. She was there yesterday.
Yeah. Yes.
So what she puts up on her emails, I just want to show you that because she also recognizes the Indigenous people. They do that. I don't know whether they do it or she does it. And I just want to show you this because it's come up right now. So it's interesting to see that.
Yeah.
Although, I mean, of course, whether part of the discussion or not, but I just found it important because I really found it really interesting what she does. This is what she writes at the bottom of her email.
Yes. Yep.
So I don't know whether you people do that.
Yeah, but certainly in Australia, look, it varies from person to person. I certainly pay my respects to traditional owners on the country wherever I find myself on for any workshops, any presentations. On a lot of my documentation, it's probably not on all of it, and that's more of an oversight. But I think particularly for me, I've spent a lot of time working in Indigenous communities. I've actually been adopted into a family in Northern Arnhem Land, which is the top end of Australia. And for me, I know about this much of their culture, but I learn all the time. And the welcoming into their family and to their family structure is a way for them to place me in their system. It's a way for me to know, it's a way for them to know how to relate to me. Where do I fit in with their culture and their laws and responsibilities? And so I take that really seriously. But it's also created opportunities for deep conversations and understanding about my own culture and what I bring to the conversation and what I bring, even my historical and cultural ties, traditionally coming from Scotland and Ireland before we migrated out to Australia many generations ago. But I think that sense of who you are and your spirituality, your connection with whether it's God or country or spirit, this greater sense that you're more than just an individual and you are connected.
Yeah, and that's really important. I think it's really important. Of course, obviously, I will also connect it to mediation and the fact that those traditional processes. So what I'm actually doing in August, I'm actually going to do a symposium again on mediation in our culture and traditions with a focus on Indigenous people and traditional mediation as is happening. So you have to be part of that. So please, I'll make you put that in your calendar.
I would love to.
Yeah. So Sarah, heart, soul, spirituality, and mediation. What does it mean to you? And it's totally your interpretation, your thoughts. But before that, I think you still need to tell us about yourself, because we know where you're coming from, kind of thing.
Yes. Okay. So I call myself a conflict strategist and a mediator. So I don't just do mediation work. I'm doing more and more bigger picture strategy work with clients and helping them understand the conflict, get clarity around what matters to them, and make good decisions. I'm a second generation practitioner. So my father is a barrister and is a mediator, one of the early ones in Australia, helped to establish the profession here in Australia. But I also come from, my mum's side of the family is very much social justice driven and caring for community. So I kind of combine those things. And that's why for me, mediation isn't just a tick in the box process. It's how can we empower people? How can we help communities find good solutions? I work, I'm an international best-selling author, TEDx talker, multiple awards in my industry. None of that really matters, because what really matters to me is when I see clients walk away from a conflict feeling empowered, feeling like they've found their solutions. And I work in Aboriginal and remote communities in Australia, in the Pacific, in other places. I work in the corporate space and in boardrooms. So it's a real breadth of experience. But I think I always bring what I've learnt working in Aboriginal communities back to the boardroom, because it is about leadership. It is about how we listen to each other and how we make good decisions.
No, I think that's important also. But I think at this stage or later, you could also take us about the value systems that you were brought up under, and whatever you picked up from. I'm even going back to grandparents, of course, parents, and all that. I think that connection is really important, because I do that on evolution of a mediator. Yes. I do that, but I think for this particular symposium, that is important. So if you want to take us through it now or later.
Yeah, look, I think certainly, particularly from probably both sides of the family, have always had this strong sense of, I think, purpose, of giving back, of serving. My mum's side of the family have been environmentalists before it was even a word, and they used to grow trees, and on the farming country, they'd farm land and give profits back to create tennis courts or halls and things for community. And so there was always this sense of giving back, of being caring for not just your profits or making business, but for the community and the land and the country. And my father's side of the family were very strong Irish Catholic background, so they had this real sense of social justice as well. There's a story in our family history from my father's side that there's a little patch of land out of Adelaide, and it was the last patch of land that the Indigenous people were allowed to camp on their traditional grounds, and this was land that my family offered up to them freely without persecution. So there was this sense of connection there. I think historically as a family, we've always probably played a peacemaking role without it being termed that. We've always played a bit of a step up and take responsibility role and wanting to help others. In my immediate family, we grew up Catholic, particularly from the Jesuit tradition. And for those that don't know much about that tradition, there's this process of discernment and collective decision making. So for me, I also grew up with mediation, but also this discernment, listening to what's around you, listening to not just with your ears. And I think that's weaved its way into my very soul. And so mediation, again, isn't just about how do we help people get a settlement. It's how do we find that sense of calm and that sense of peace. And sometimes we can do it through mediation and sometimes we can't. But I think there's some underlying principles that help guide us and help us be calm for others in conflict.
I think that connection, but of course, I think maybe we need to go back to that, because I'm sure there's lots more. This is just a brief of it, but you can connect it. So what would heart, soul, spirituality by itself mean to you?
Heart, soul, spirituality for me is it's this. When I hear those words, I picture, you see me closing my eyes, because it's a state of being for me. For me, it's a sense of finding balance and peace and being really present in the moment. And it's for me, it's connecting my heart, it's recognizing and listening to my soul, and it's expressed through spirituality. And I think that spirituality is the actioning of the heart and soul and the connection to something that's bigger and beyond yourself. And in the mediation work, I practice a lot of the things that I do, and I often don't talk about it because it's often judged. But what I often do are things like I'll meditate before I start my mediation practice, because I'm very conscious that we're working in conflict space. And conflict spaces are highly stressful. There's a taint, there's a poison that can creep into you when you're holding other people in that space and helping them. So it's really important for me as a practitioner to make sure that I'm caring for me and I'm connecting with where I need to be. And I do that by caring not just for myself intellectually, but spiritually. I make sure I care for my soul and my heart, because we know that walking in conflict can hurt your heart as practitioners as much as it can the people that find themselves in conflict. So for me, it is all of those aspects, and it's finding ways to care and nurture for our heart, our soul, and our spirituality that empowers us to walk this space.
Yep. But otherwise, I mean, of course, when you say that, of course, heart, soul, spirituality playing a role. But yes. I mean, have you really, in terms of spirituality, I mean, really, have you tried to explore that a little more? Have you?
Yeah, look, I've had quite a spirituality journey over the years. Obviously, so we grew up Catholic tradition, Catholic religion is my home base. I guess that's what I grew up with, so that's what I know, that's what the language. But over the years, I've explored Buddhism, and at different times, that's really resonated with me. And I think other times, particularly working in Indigenous communities, it's there's this spirituality around many traditional Aboriginal cultures whose law and spirituality is strong. And it's so learning for me in those spaces has been profound. And I think as Westerners, we have lost so much of our valuing of spirituality to some extent. And when I'm working in Indigenous communities, I often think that people in those communities probably see the world differently to the way many of us Western people do, because we've lost this capacity to see that spirituality in a way, to see those spirits in a different way. And I think it's a profound loss that the Western world is really grappling with. What does this mean? And so for me, making sure, for instance, when I head out to do my work out bush with communities, I've got to retune, I've got to reconnect in a way, because it's so busy in the Western space, it's so busy in the corporate arena, and that we miss this listening, this deep connection to land. And when I'm out in communities, I have to listen to country, because country's talking, and if we don't make time and space for it, we're missing out on information. We're missing out on potential ways to contribute to peacemaking.
No, I think that you're lucky that way, that you get to work there and you can actually connect to something that we are maybe losing out on, or maybe we've lost. I think that's really important, and you have to take that to the world, because I think we have to go back to that, which is what the idea behind that last symposium on mediation and culture and traditions was. That let's connect to something which is already there, and the understanding of mediation, that little box that gets circulated around. There's lots more than that. There's lots more than that. It's
so much more. There's so many layers to it, I think, that we're just scraping across the surface at the moment. But as practitioners, I think we need to be brave enough to dive into it. It's this conversation too around emotions, and should we be dealing with emotions in mediation? And if we can't deal with emotions in mediation, we certainly won't be able to delve into the spirituality and the heart of the soul of it, because that's how so much of it is expressed. So I think, I feel very privileged. I feel like with most disputes, it's not our dispute. The parties have it all in them, and it's up to us to help bring that to the surface. And if that means tapping into the spirituality, that soul connection, and helping bring that to the surface, then that's our job as well. And it's not for everybody, but certainly it's something that I'm very conscious of making space for. And even if they aren't aware that that's what I'm doing it for me, if nothing else. And in doing so, I know that I am being present, and I'm being opened to the potential possibilities.
because the idea, of course, I'm still keeping the discussions open. I don't
Yes.
like to structure my discussions at all.
Go for it.
But because look, I said one, the aspect of the mediator. So heart, soul, spirituality, connection to the mediator, which you've brought out. Then the parties. How do you connect them to that, or are they connected to it, and how you bring that on the table? Yes. And then of course in the process, how do you really see that? So maybe each of them also, maybe you could give your thoughts on that.
Yes. Look, so there's those three aspects of heart, soul, and spirituality. It's the self as mediator, it's the parties themselves and what it means for them, but it's also for process. How do we make space and recognize that in process? And I think that that's also a really important discussion. So for parties, for me, it always starts with asking them the question, what matters to you in this resolution process? What matters to you as you try to deal with this conflict? How do you usually seek healing and resolution? And do we bring that into this conversation? So I'm not afraid to go there, really, I think is what it is. That I don't have all the answers. And I certainly, when I'm working cross-culturally, won't have all the cultural or the spirituality experience, but I'm a vessel that's open to it. And I'm going to ask some questions so that we can make sure this has meaning and legitimacy for you. And so we start with those parties, and then from that place, we're negotiating process. So I've worked it out for me, we're working it out with parties, and now what will that look like in practice? So as mediation itself, rather than just following those core steps of a model, which a lot of people do, that's a good starting place. But it's quite sterile, right? It misses heart and soul, really, because you've got to follow introduction and you do this. So where is the spirit, those underlying values that we weave into that model itself? And if a process is to have legitimacy, particularly in a cultural space or where there's the aspect of spirit is really important, then we need to weave that into the model itself.
Because sometimes I feel that, are we losing out on it because are we waiting for some scientific evidence of spirituality? Are we waiting for something to see and quantify in terms of the energy or whatever we might want to call it? Are we waiting for that to happen? So I don't know.
I don't know. Great question. I don't know, because I think if we all think about when we find ourselves in conflict, because we do as mediators, it's not just everybody else, right? And there's this emotional angst that we feel. But when we find peace in it, and we do that by reflection, maybe it's by prayer, maybe it's by meditation, there's this sense of calm and peace that emerges. And when we reach that place of peace, I think often that's when we best connect with the spirit of wise decision making. And it's those wise leaders that exude that sense, that presence of peace, that for instance, in traditional cultures, we often look to them for leadership, then spiritual leadership, not just community leadership, because sitting with these people is a humbling thing that you can't even put to words, right? That sense of deep spirituality. And so there's power in that, and there's wisdom in that. And I think as mediators, we have the potential to be the conduit for it, not necessarily the owners of the answers. And I think, wouldn't it be curious to see how we could transform our practice with more of that?
I think what you just said, I think this is really what is important, and this is what I really wanted to bring out, this aspect of that spiritual presence or whatever. I mean that, again, like I said, it is not something that you have meters to gauge that energy level over. It's just there. So this is what I really wanted to bring out through the symposium, and I think what you brought out is really important. And because you're connected with it, and a lot of people are not. People are not. So I think that's what you really brought out, and I think we need to explore this a lot more.
Yeah. Look, I think, I don't know about you, but I've been very fortunate over the years for very few, maybe 2 or 3 individuals that I've been in the presence of that have just, it stirs my soul. There's just this sense of, I can sit at your feet and listen, and not in a ego way, but just this sense of peace, being with these people that are tapping into something more than just that intellectual knowledge space. And so I guess I've been privileged to have that. I can't necessarily put it in words or identify what that is of people, but I know of myself when I have been mediating in some of the most challenging or daunting places. When I pray or when I meditate or when I reach out to country, I'll often say, help me to be what I need to be in this moment. Help me to listen to what I need to listen to and to serve how I'm called to serve. And I think that enables me at least to park the ego and create some space for something to flow through me. And I think, whether you call it magic or with whatever you call it, that deep conflict requires more than just an intellectual agreement, let's say, because a deep conflict requires transformation at a deeply personal level. And when you're dealing with multiple parties, particularly, it's a really challenging thing to connect people through that.
Well, I just feel, Sarah, that what you've said maybe needs to be taken out as a clip, which only thing I don't really get time to do that. But I think we need to put out these short clips, because in this, whatever section, right now, what you've just said, I think really it needs to go out, because this is exactly what the whole focus was on. So I think maybe if you get time, I know you're on a holiday, but if you get time,
someone to do it for me.
But I tell you, this is what needs to be circulated, because what you've really put out, I mean, people maybe don't get time to think about it, or the like I said, the exposure that you've had and these people, because the whole idea behind my saying that let's identify those with the mediator mindset, that mindset includes this whole heart, soul, spirituality aspect. And if we bring these people out and people see them as people who can actually, like you said, in a transformative way, if they take you through the process, I think that by itself gives that whole atmosphere in, say, in the community or wherever, that okay, there is that connection with the heart, soul, spirituality, and that maybe binds the community. I don't know how you see it. Maybe you'll be able to tell us better at how the community gets in some way connected to the entire thing. Have you noticed that?
Yes, absolutely. Yep, I'm just getting rid of a message. Someone was calling me. I think that, absolutely, that when you make space for it, and particularly we're talking about how critical it is to have the right mediator for the right case, right? Because the right mediator can somehow weave all these parties together and create a legitimacy to an agreement. And it's not just the mediator, they're tapping into the existing resources of a community, but they're kind of pulling it together. And interestingly, in Northeast Arnhem Land, the Yolngu people up there talk about they don't distinguish between the role of the mediator and the leader. And a leader must necessarily have the skills of a mediator. So they see that as one and the same. And I think we often see, for instance, throughout Asia and other places, traditional cultures, that the mediator plays more of an authoritative role as well, that they make more decisions. And I often wonder around that connection around mediator, leader, and capacity to bring people together for decision making. And I think that as a profession, we've got a lot we can learn from traditional cultures, but a lot we can learn from spirituality and spiritual practices around what it means to make good decisions in times of conflict and crisis.
Well, like I said, it's amazing, because exactly what you're saying is the focus now for me. And this is what I'm trying to do, that this aspect of mediator and leader, because I feel that over time we've lost out on that aspect, and leaders being the politics that we saw, or maybe, look, I'll still connect it to colonization. I have this, I don't know, maybe I'm just obsessed with this whole colonization bit a little too much, but I feel that what happened in communities and how we diverted from this aspect of mediator, leader, to the other power in the other sense kind of leader. I feel that if from the grassroots onwards, if we can identify these people and they can be part of communities and then obviously states, nations in the world, because I think we're missing out on those leaders. I think that is exactly why of course, look, there must be lots of other reasons for conflicts. I mean, I'm not an expert to even talk about those things, but I think a lot of those things maybe can be taken care of. Again, when I say a small community gets in some way connected because of a person like that who brings them all together in this way, connecting spiritually, heart, soul, spirituality aspect. I think over time, if you can get these people out there, because look, they don't want to be out upfront. I mean, they're not wanting anything. They just want to do this, and they don't want to. They're never going to be part of any political process. I just feel, but we have to be able to get them in and then take them up, and I think we'll see a different world. It'll take time. I mean, my mediation vision 2000, it's only 2026. It's going to be 2031. Again, it's connected to Ken's birthday. So when he turns 90 or whatever, it's a long process. But I think that is where my focus now is.
Yeah. Look, I think that, as mediators, we're often sitting behind, right? We're helping others up front. We're helping others make decisions, others reach resolution. But in doing so, we've diminished our role as mediator, or the skill sets that we as mediators bring, and that I think more leaders need to learn to bring mediation skills to what they do. And what it does, though, it challenges what we're seeing is very much personality-driven politics. This one individual has charisma, and they're quite self-serving. As a mediator leader, I think there's this connection around how do we serve others? How do we bring a decision that serves more broader people? And how do we do it in a way that doesn't avoid the conflict, but it seeks to reduce the risk of diminishing others? So we're wrestling with nuance, we're wrestling with messiness, and we're okay and we're comfortable with that. So we make better decisions. And I think I would love to see a world where we're really celebrating and empowering those type of leaders.
But I think also, I think what we need to go back and see the changes in society over time, and whatever society by itself has given more importance to, and maybe certain things there have to be looked at, of course, and then reversed. I think that also will connect us to, of course, certain people and certain processes and a certain connection within people. So I don't know how you look at that.
Yeah, look, I think too, there's this other aspect of it which maybe fits in here. One of the notes I wrote in preparation is the value of ceremony and ritual through mediation process. And when I'm working in traditional cultures with First Nations people in Australia, where culture's strong still, there are very particular rituals and ceremonial aspects that are built into the decision-making, the negotiation, and the healing process. And that really allows the business to be fully resolved. And I think in Western culture, what I know is that we've lost the value of ritual. We've lost really the value of ceremony. It's something that's kind of diminished and kind of people roll their eyes at. And I think because of that, we then miss those chances to connect at that deeper level. So to be able to find some ways of, I guess, making it safe again, making it easy to reconnect around those ceremony and ritual aspects that are so critical to connecting with spirituality and really connecting with a deep sense of healing. Because it's one thing to resolve the dispute and get a written agreement. It doesn't necessarily mean that people have reached resolution or healing. And so we're missing this whole component of this business of peacemaking, because we're not actually peacemaking if people don't find that inner peace. All we're doing is band-aiding.
I think one thing that I've also, I mean, of course, we all know this, that sense of ownership towards community obviously has changed. And because of that, if you don't feel part of community, then all these aspects, like you said, rituals or anything, then they stop meaning anything, because you're not part of anything. Now you're just some individuals in certain space having a conflict because of whatever reason. It could be maybe because of where you stay or the business that you do or whatever. But it's still not that community that exists. So I think maybe that part also. Of course, I mean, sure, sociologists are looking at it and looking at how communities have changed and everything. But I think that's an important aspect which has changed over time. So that I think that also we need to maybe do something about. It's connected, I think.
Yeah, well, it certainly influences how decisions are made. And so if you're no longer really focusing on the impact of community and you're focusing on an individual impact, and then it completely changes the lens of decision making. It completely changes the information you're taking on. It changes everything that you hear because you've shut out all those other things. You've dismissed them. And I think that's part of the big challenge when we find ourselves having to mediate complex multi-party disputes, particularly, whether it's developers, community, councils, different community groups themselves. Suddenly we don't know what to do with these issues.
Yeah. Because one, you said the Western aspect, of course, how Western thought process or things have changed there. But I do think there is some Asian concept also, or an African concept, because is there something that we need to also study from there?
I'd love to. I think there's so much cross-fertilization of conversations that we all need to do as practitioners, and to be able to just sit and listen to each other and discover together. I think absolutely, I hear bits and pieces coming out of different countries, but it's certainly not my area of expertise. And I'd love to sit at a table with people and drink tea and eat and just learn from each other. What a rich experience.
Yeah. And I just said Asian and African, but South American and everything also. Every European, everything, we'll have to look at all those.
Yes.
Because I mean, of course, these are much larger areas, and you just say Asia and all. Because there was a very nice session with Shadia Maraban in the Symposium. If you get time, please watch that. And she did speak about the heart. And I keep talking about this, that she works in conflict areas where there's violence, and how she connects with these people who, of course, are armed and killing people and everything, and how she connects at the heart. And people like that, they break down with her. So that part of it, she was talking about an Asian model. So we should look at an Asian model. But I mean, I'm saying that maybe if you look at it as region wise, maybe we'll get that wrong. So then I started this series that I had those discussions on Mahatma Gandhi and mediation, not because of Mahatma Gandhi. Is there a humanistic approach to mediation? Is there a model? Do we call it a model or an approach? So I don't know how you look at that.
Yeah, look, I think that we run a risk if we start labeling it as an Asian model or a South American model or a Western model, because it then stops us working together, because everyone has something that's different. But we are all human, right? We all bleed with the same coloured blood, and we are all connected. And so we have to be able to negotiate those aspects of it, and not forgetting that as we are all human, it's that first point of contact, our capacity to connect with each other is what builds a bridge for transformation of conflict. And so however you do that, however you express that, people often in the heat of conflict just want to be heard and valued. And they need to know that it's safe to do that. And so it sounds like she makes it safe for them to connect on a deeper level. And I think that's what transforms conflict into potential for healing.
Absolutely. But please suggest certain topics that I need to take up for discussion, because I mean, I'm sure there are various aspects that we need to discuss in that approach. Be it, call it, I don't know what words to use for that. Humanistic approach is one. Because this humanistic thing came up as part of that discussion on Mahatma Gandhi and mediation. So similarly, there will be certain, like you said, let's not look at it from the region perspective. Let's use certain words which are common to everyone. So I think you need to suggest that aspect also.
Yeah, I would love to have that conversation and finding the word. So like each area will have a word. One of the interesting things I've done when I'm training mediation across different countries, just picking that word mediation and finding out what does it mean in your language. So I know what it means from an English perspective, but in Arnhem Land, there's a slightly different take on it, and they have different words. I know in Solomon Islands, traditional language didn't have a word for mediator, but they had other aspects that they could combine for that word. So as a profession, for all of us, having those sort of conversations, I think really that starts us connecting on a deeper level, where we value our diversity, where we value our difference, and we recognise that despite all of that, there is something weaving us all together.
Yeah, because I think what I need to do is because obviously you were in the symposium and you did read the theme, but I just want to put that theme up, because the idea was exactly what you were just saying, because people are not familiar with the word. they're familiar with the process. To connect them to that process is what is important. So this was what the theme was of the symposium. This people around the world may not be familiar with the word mediation, but they're familiar with the process as it has been used from time immemorial. So the collaborative approach to dispute resolution has been used by families and communities, including indigenous and business communities, for centuries. So this is what the idea was. A lot of it, some parts of it came out in the last symposium, but the one in August, I think, for me, I think that will be the focus. That let's bring out these words. Let's, talk about those processes a little more, because of course there were people like we had Martha from Canada. Of course, she's from the Mohawk community, so she's part of it. She brought some parts of it. And of course, there were other people like James in Kenya, because he's working with communities. You working with communities, you spoke about that. But I think now we just need to focus maybe indigenous communities, maybe just do that, because it is the World Day of what is it called, World Day of Indigenous People. I'm just show you that because that's what the idea behind that symposium is. So I think the thing is that I think maybe those discussions have happened, not happened. I don't know, because I don't read too much. You people, of course, read things, so you can tell me more about it. But you have to then suggest people. You have to suggest people who can then take that conversation further, and we can actually. Of course, people did not put papers out. I asked them papers. This is what's that? 9th August 2022. This is the second International Symposium in Mediation, Our Culture and Traditions, to coincide with the International Day of the World's Indigenous People. So let's focus on the indigenous people. So let's do that.
I will. I'll get some invites out for you and see if I can find some Indigenous mediators from across our country who might like to join in.
That'd be really nice. That'd be really nice.
Yeah.
And do you think we should also then talk to people who have benefited from those people and their work? Maybe you think we can all talk to that, or talk to them also in the symposium?
I can reach out and see if anyone's interested in having that conversation. It would be interesting to hear from their perspective as a user, the difference between what's made a good mediator, what has been the impact for you of a good mediator as opposed to someone who's come in and perhaps not connected and not listened and not helped empower them. I think that would be really interesting.
Yeah, because I think that the person himself or herself, the mediator as such, doesn't even know, doesn't realize a lot of things. And when we hear from the user, maybe the things that we'll hear and in terms of the process or the impact also, impact on the community and the people, I think that's also really important.
Yeah.
But the only thing is that now, to make this discussion wider, do we have to now connect the three together? Yesterday Jodie was there. She's also from Australia. She spoke about the authentic self, bringing your authentic self into the mediation. So we were also discussing it. We did not reach too much into that as to what is authentic self. So have you looked at that?
Oh, look, I love talking about authenticity. And I think there's this thing for people, we don't know how to articulate it very well, but I think most people can recognize when someone has been authentic or not. There's just this sense that you get whether someone's really actually who they say they are, or is it just like they're just pretending. And so I think that actually we all know and we can all read it. So let's start valuing that instinct. And what it calls for us as mediators to do is we can't sit separate to what's going on in this mediation room or under this mediation tree. We are a part of this process. And so when we seek to put an intellectual or a process barrier between us and the parties, if we talk about it in energy flow in a way, what we're doing is we're stopping the energy flowing around the room. It hits us and it bounces off again. And people connect and recognize that. Because, and I'm not saying we need to cry with the parties, maybe, it's hard to know, but we do need to bring who we are to the table. So I'm very conscious of bringing who I am to the mediation table. I'm very conscious of saying to the parties, I may not be the right person for this mediation, but this is what I bring. And in doing so, I'm allowing them to make decisions. And when they choose me, it also is giving me legitimacy. It's giving me authority then. So then I have authority to be authentically me, but authority to authentically manage the process. So I think as mediators, we have to know ourselves. And if we only know ourselves at this is my degree, this is my training, this is my expertise level, we find it hard to connect on an emotional level. We probably then find it difficult to know what to do with emotions in a room. We're probably only assessing this conflict from perhaps a legalistic framework. And again, when we're doing that, we aren't authentically a full person, and we're not authentically recognizing others either. We've put boxes around things, and so we'll never dive deep. We'll never dive deep into the healing because we're just skimming that surface.
Yeah, I think a very important thing that you said, and I've been also saying this, you said mediation tree. And I keep saying, because we talk about the mediation table, maybe like you said, the room, but the tree gets missed out.
Yes. I can't tell you how many trees I've sat under in the dirt, in the sand. Honestly, that's my favorite place to mediate, when I'm sitting outside with my feet in the dirt, and I draw pictures on the sand when I'm working with people, particularly when language is an issue. And we write and we draw and we connect with the country.
Because that's really, really important, because that's what I keep saying. It's such an informal process. Please do not put it into this formal box. It can happen anywhere, wherever the parties are comfortable, you are comfortable. Of course, now, like for me, it's the online space. I'm really comfortable with that. But wherever it is, I mean, don't put it down to a table or a room. So I think that's
absolutely. You know, I've had the privilege of doing mediation ceremonially up in Arnhem Land, and part of that ceremony process is dancing, you know, and so that becomes part of that process. And what an incredible experience that is.
I know. I mean, these are the things that make it, like I said, a community getting together and being part of resolution. I mean, it's not just like it is your dispute. No, it is our dispute, and let us now resolve it, because the community is affected by it, and that's big. So again, that goes back to community. So that do we first create communities and then we create this, or we create this and the community will be created around it? I think that's again. We'll discuss. I mean, I don't know the answers, but
look, I don't think there's easy answers. I think it's going to take everything. I think it's going to take us as mediators advocating for that model. I think it's going to take allies in community who recognize the value of it. I think it's going to take some case studies. We're going to have to practice it. We're going to have to trial it. We're going to have to make mistakes and do it wrong, and then learn from that and do it better, so that we're not attacking. We're building up from both sides.
And also what you said about crying with the party, I think this aspect is also the way it's created, that this whole neutral, and you have to maybe distance yourself from this because the other person might think that no, you are favoring this person. I think we have to go beyond all that. That this is not whatever words you use, omnipartial, multi-partial. I think those are things that we also have to discuss at the same time. I think.
That, you know, like if both parties are in the room in tears and I'm sitting like a robot, it does them a disservice. It devalues what they've just gone through as well. And I think that it's a part of that emotional intelligence aspect as well. You know, we have to be able to empathize. We have to be able to manage that. We have to be able to understand their emotions and it's in doing that, it sounds like one of the other people that you talk about, it sounds like she helps people specifically because she can do that, and she leans into that emotion, and she's probably holding them as they cry on her shoulder. You know, what a powerful moment of healing that would be.
Because like you said, that once parties have chosen you, it brings this aspect that, of course, Sarah, which is part of it, she brings us together. She's not just looking at one individual or one person or one party. I think that comes from that. I think it does come from that, because of obviously the trust we keep talking about, the trust in the mediator. I think is the most important aspect. And like you said, in indigenous communities, they know those people. So this again comes from identifying those with the mediator mindset, and then spreading that around, and the user experience goes with it. So people know that when people talk about it, that no, this person is working for everyone. It's not that they, like you said, not distancing yourself, not a robot, but you're part of the process and you're part of the healing and all those things. But again, the
and
media,
sharing our stories. I think we have to share the stories. And, you know, like sharing the stories of what's worked well, and so that people can see it doesn't have to end in a fight. Hey, here's some great examples of some really wonderful outcomes. And those constructive stories matter. And I think that we fall into the trap of only telling the high drama conflict stories that have gone badly, and we've stopped sharing those stories of the mediator hero, of the wisdom and the resolution stories, perhaps because they're not as glamorous, because they're not creating an adrenaline rush. But I think as a profession, let's share those stories. Let's share those quiet stories of how things used to be, how we used to resolve conflict. Or, hey, in the neighborhood, in my neighborhood, we've got social media and people keep posting about noisy dogs or trees. And, there's this social media thing where everyone's like, have a fight with them, tell them how bad they are. So what I've started doing is jumping in and saying, hey, have you thought about doing this? And this might be a great outcome. And it seems really little, but I think as mediators, if we were all doing that, what it shows to the community and my communities, hey, there's a different way of looking at this problem, and you actually can help find a better solution.
Because I think what I'm trying to do, I started this series called Mediation Works. There's only been one episode out there, because I do commercial matters. Of course, this was a general counsel talking about it, but at least the good part is in that he said Vikram brings in that human aspect of it. I really like that part. So it's not that in commercial matters you have to move away from it. I think that's also an important message we have to send out.
Because I agree.
Because I've seen when people talk about this whole deal making way of going through mediation, I think we also need to change that, because these are people. They're people. It might be a commercial dispute, but these are people.
I can't agree with you more. And I think that we've done them a disservice by focusing only on the interpretation of the contract, for instance. And if it was just about the money, if it was just about how the law is interpreted, they wouldn't be in as big a conflict as they are. But, it's people and emotions, and we're messy, and we need to be able to lean into that as well.
Yeah, because the thing is that, of course, again, if you get time, please watch it. But he talks about the relationship with the other party, how, of course, that relationship became better, and it's mutual respect. I think it's mutual respect and everything that came out. So that's why I wanted people to listen to that. But of course, I'm going to ask everyone to bring out these people and the users, because of course, I can only bring out people who in commercial matters, but of course I want it to be much wider. So I think we need to bring those people out. And let me just put out some comments that we are seeing now. Christina Merite saying, peacemaking versus band aiding. Good point, right? Mediation tree. She said, wow, mediation tree, drawing in the sand. Awesome. And leaning into emotion. Amazing. Sharing stories of wonderful outcomes is a great reminder. Moving away from the high drama is a good reminder. Nice comments. Thank you, Christina.
Thank you. Thanks for the comments.
So, like I said, I keep saying that when you reach out and your words go out, it resonates with people. And I think, like I keep saying that I don't think these discussions have happened. I'm not saying, look, I'm not saying that I'm unique. I'm putting these out, not in that sense, but I think we need to have these discussions. And if they're having that, I would also want to be able to hear them, because I'm obviously I think we need to talk about this aspect where we've maybe moved away from it. Is it, I don't like to say it, I mean, it's not ready, but I'm going to say it, that maybe this whole, again, this Western box of mediation that got circulated around the world. Now, did it come from an individualistic society because of which certain aspects were not circulated with it? And heart, soul, spirituality, I felt, is one of those things which did not form part of how it went around. I mean, I don't know how you look at it.
Yeah, look, I guess the separation of powers, the vision of separation from the church and the decision-making bodies probably all played into that, the very legalistic bedrock that emerged from all those, the psychology background, particularly for family dispute resolution, is all there. And that that potential to weave into it. And I think that's why it's so important as mediation industry, we don't only bring lawyers into the mediation room, or it's not only lawyers that are getting trained. That's why we need this diversity and this diversity of thought, so that we enrich the whole gamut of decision making. We recognize it isn't just one aspect, but there are multiple aspects for resolution and healing: heart, soul, spirituality, intellectual, relationships, financial, information sharing. All of those aspects combine into the contributing pillars of good decision making.
Well, look, I keep connecting this to, again, colonization, whether I should keep doing it, but I think that is where things come from, that the aspect of courts and lawyers, that's what is involved in dispute resolution. And that is another of my symposia I'm going to talk about. I'll tell you about that also. But Christina is in Wellington in New Zealand, the one who put out these comments.
Yes.
So I think we have to bring her into the discussion. So please.
Oh, there's some wonderful practitioners. Over there, there's some wonderful practitioners there.
Yeah, Christina, please be part of the symposium. It'll be nice to hear. Please just connect with me and let's get you into the symposium. I think the thoughts are going to be really important. So this colonization aspect and this conditioning that has happened over time, have you seen that or looked at it?
Look, well, I certainly have. I've been very privileged to be involved in a project called the Mile Rom Project, which was work that we did in East Arnhem Land, and it brought together Western mediators and Yolngu leaders in Arnhem Land and Indigenous peoples from around the world, actually, where we talked about what it means to mediate and peacemake together. And so for me, this experience really forced me to explore what are my cultural barriers, blinders, blinkers that have impacted how I do my work. What are the colonization? What are these assumptions that I'm making, and why am I doing these things? So it forced me to really question my own assumptions about the practice of mediation. I think that I really love, there's nothing more that I love than to get out bush and do the mediation work where I sit under the tree and I'm listening differently and I'm co-designing models that include ceremony, include ritual, and include the Western requirements for good decision making. And so that we're weaving a process of resolution that is all encompassing, really, rather than just a narrow focus.
Absolutely. I think that's what we really need to also discuss. And again, like I said, the colonization part. So let me just put that out here. Yep. So this is going to be in September. Yep. So it's going to be called, I'm going to call it International Symposium on Colonization and Mediation instead of Decolonization and Mediation. I don't know. What do you think? What is better? Colonization and mediation or decolonization and mediation?
Oh, well, why don't you use both words? Because I think they both bring what is going on, or what can we learn from this experience? Because I think it's both. The colonization has impacted, but the decolonization is also this chance to really reflect and dive in. And look, certainly in mediation, from a Western perspective, we've been taught, it's one mediator that controls the room. Nobody else really knows what's going on. So I think that's partly too why many have found being vulnerable in these type of conversations too daunting. So we need to make it safe for other practitioners who haven't been, whether they're not brave enough, whether they've never experienced, making it okay to really dive and have open and honest dialogue about what is going on or how could we learn for each other. And I think that's what I love about what you're doing, is that you're really encouraging people to deeply reflect on what they do. And I've seen some of your interviews with some people that have really struggled with that. They've struggled to talk about that personal aspect. It's very easy to talk about the intellectual, the process, but you challenge us to go personal and you challenge us to connect those aspects. And I think that that's incredibly valuable for a profession. And I'm excited by, in a sense, the increasing online engagement by practitioners globally, because it allows us to do this in a really intimate way, in a sense. And I think that that's powerful for the profession.
So first of all, Shira, thank you very much for watching things, because not too many people in this world watch it. That's all I can say. So thank you very much for watching it. And I think that is really important, connecting each other on that basis, because this the process, the whole, as mediators, as people, I think connecting each other and talking about things in a very informal way, on an informal basis, I think I've enjoyed that aspect. I mean, I in general can't make it formal, so I don't even know how to do that.
Right.
So I think that aspect is really, I feel, it's really helped, and that's why I think people have got connected. I don't know. So I think that's really been nice. But I think maybe at this point, if you just want to kind of conclude it, because I'll tell you what the reason is, because the next session, of course, Gunavati hasn't come in yet. But what happens is that the next one, if I don't, like I told you, if I don't start the event on time, then Facebook and all, they don't recognize it as it started, and they say event cancelled. So that's the only thing. So please.
Could I read a poem? I've got a little poem that I've written from my book, and I thought that could pull it all together. So my book, Grounding, a collection of poems, The Business of Peacemaking Culture and Decision Making, is available on Amazon, hard copy or electronic. And this is one of the poems that I thought would be nice to read out and connect. It's called Threaded Together. Weave a tapestry of people whose dreams, aspirations, hope bring forth intent, who understand self, the foundational stone from which all grows, who are brave, bold, and lean into opportunity. Rounded, a heart and soul to entwine and create possibilities.
So very nice. I think maybe you have to send this one to me. Maybe I can use it. I can use it somewhere. I can put it best.
You can. I just thought, that's kind of captures all of what we've talked about today. And thank you very much for the opportunity.
Really nice. And of course, if you want to just come into any session, of course, the only problem is that people don't get too much of an opportunity, because I hog the entire discussion otherwise. So I keep
telling
lovely. People, that's why I say please watch it or live, because if you come in and you don't get an opportunity to say something, but please put your questions and your comments in the live chat. It always helps. So what I haven't done, okay, so this is something which I normally do. Maybe I'll take a minute to quickly go through the slides, because I'll have to close this live stream and start the other, but very quickly, because people are going to. But only thing, Sarah, we missed out on the tractor. Your tractor we missed out on.
We did. I was doing a meeting in a tractor the other day. Today you've got the ocean views. So
Gunavati is here. So quickly what I'll do is I'll just go through the slides, which I like doing, because I told you people don't really watch what I do, because they don't get to know, which I will tell them, okay, I won't even talk about it. I put this out as part of this. Maybe people can read it later. This is the symposium of people. This is the one today with Ken Flo, keynote speaker, 9:30 today. And then we have in conversation with Anna. This is the discussion on creativity, innovation, and mediation on the 21st. And of course, the speakers, quickly, so many people, which keep happening now. I have only 1 minute. So Guna, today, all this is happening. So I won't take it longer, because like I told you, this whole time thing, starting the next.
You've got to go.
No, you're still here. You're still here. I just cut the live stream. The only thing is that tell people, please, on LinkedIn, there is a bell icon, press it next to anyone's profile, and you'll get to know all their posts. And on YouTube, all the planned events are already put out there, so you can watch that. So thank you very much, Sarah. Really, always wonderful talking to you. And what all you've said is things that I've really wanted to discuss and want to put out. And I think if you get some time, please make some clips and let's put them out. So thank you very much.